My husband mocked me at his promotion party. She's just a trophy from my poor phase. Everyone laughed. The next morning, his new boss arrived in a Rolls-Royce, with me in the back seat. I watched him smirk, completely unaware of the surprise awaiting him. He had no idea who really controlled everything. I froze outside Leonard's home office door, my hand raced to knock, when I heard him speaking to someone on the phone. The party tonight is perfect timing. I'll make it clear that I've outgrown this phase of my life, including my wife. Time to upgrade to someone who matches my success. My coffee cup slipped from my other hand, crashing to the hardwood floor I had polished yesterday morning, shattering like my understanding of our marriage. The porcelain fragments scattered across the gleaming wood, each piece reflecting the afternoon sunlight streaming through our bay window. I stared at the mess, my mind struggling to process what I had just heard. 7 years of marriage reduced to a phase that needed upgrading. The carefully prepared coffee I had brought him, 2 sugars, splash of cream exactly as he preferred, now created a spreading brown stain on the floor I had spent an hour perfecting. Leonard's voice continued through the heavy oak door, casual and confident. "Trust me, Marcus, tonight's announcement will set the stage perfectly. I've already chosen the navy dress for her to wear. Makes her look appropriately grateful but not attention-seeking. By the time I finish my speech, everyone will understand that successful men sometimes need to make difficult choices about their personal lives." My legs felt unsteady. Marcus Webb, his company's CFO, was apparently part of this conversation. This was not a spontaneous decision or a moment of cruel frustration. Leonard had planned this betrayal with the same methodical attention he brought to his quarterly reports. The navy dress hanging upstairs in our closet, the one he had specifically requested I wear tonight, was not chosen to make me look beautiful. It was selected as my execution outfit. I backed away from the door, my bare feet careful to avoid the broken ceramic. The hallway felt foreign suddenly, despite containing photographs documenting 7 years of our shared life. Our wedding picture hung beside images from anniversaries, vacations, and family gatherings. In each photo, I appeared genuinely happy, genuinely in love with the man who was currently describing me as disposable merchandise to his colleague. The morning had begun so normally. I had awakened at 5:30, moving quietly through our colonial home while Leonard slept peacefully. The kitchen had been my domain then, filled with the golden light of sunrise and the satisfaction of creating the perfect start to his important day. Fresh daisies from our garden brightened the breakfast table. His favorite coffee mug waited beside the morning newspaper, folded to the business section as he preferred. Leonard had emerged from his shower radiating excitement about his promotion celebration. Regional director at Morrison & Associates represented the culmination of years of struggle and ambition. I had shared his joy genuinely, already mentally organizing the evening's details to ensure his achievement received proper recognition. The guest list included his closest colleagues and their spouses, people I had cultivated relationships with specifically to support his career advancement. I had spent 3 full days preparing for tonight's dinner party. Our wedding china gleamed after careful polishing. The menu balanced sophistication with approachability, designed to impress without appearing pretentious. Each invitation had been personally extended via telephone, demonstrating my commitment to his professional success. The house sparkled from extensive cleaning, every surface reflecting the pride I felt in his accomplishment. Standing in our hallway now, coffee seeping into the hardwood floor, I recognized how thoroughly I had participated in orchestrating my own humiliation. The careful preparations, the selected dress, the practiced responses I had rehearsed to ensure I could discuss his achievements without overshadowing them, all of it served Leonard's plan to position me as the grateful first wife who had fulfilled her purpose. Leonard's voice drifted through the door again, discussing timing and strategy with clinical precision. The key is making it seem natural, like I'm sharing a personal revelation rather than delivering a prepared statement. Cheryl will be standing right where everyone can see her reaction. The visual impact will be perfect. The devoted wife realizing she's been replaced by her husband's evolved expectations. My hand covered my mouth, stifling the sound that wanted to emerge. He had choreographed not just his own performance but my public destruction. The promotion party I had planned with such care was designed as the stage for my humiliation. Leonard had calculated my positioning in the room, anticipated my emotional response, and prepared his colleagues to witness what he apparently considered entertaining theater. The photographs lining our hallway suddenly appeared different, like evidence in a criminal investigation rather than treasured memories. Leonard's expressions in recent images carried subtle changes I had dismissed as stress or professional focus. His smiles seemed performed rather than genuine. His posture suggested distance rather than intimacy. The warning signs had been accumulating for months, but I had interpreted them as temporary challenges rather than systematic preparation for my disposal. I walked carefully to the kitchen, avoiding the broken ceramic, and retrieved cleaning supplies from beneath the sink. The familiar motions of gathering paper towels and floor cleaner provided temporary stability while my mind processed this new reality. I had perfected the art of maintaining our household's appearance, but I had failed to recognize that my husband viewed me as another domestic element requiring periodic updating. The afternoon sunlight streaming through our bay window illuminated dust particles dancing in the air, each mote following invisible currents and patterns. I found myself envying their freedom of movement, their ability to drift wherever air currents carried them. My own life had become rigidly structured around Leonard's needs and preferences, each day choreographed to support his comfort and success. Kneeling beside the coffee stain, I began the methodical process of cleaning. The porcelain fragments clinked softly as I gathered them, sharp edges threatening cuts if handled carelessly. The metaphor was not lost on me. Our marriage had shattered just as suddenly and completely, leaving dangerous pieces that required careful navigation to avoid further injury. Leonard's voice had fallen silent behind the office door. Perhaps his strategic planning session with Marcus Webb had concluded. Soon he would emerge, expecting his coffee and my supportive attention as he prepared for tonight's celebration. He would find me cleaning up the mess his words had created, just as I had cleaned up countless other disruptions to our domestic harmony over 7 years of marriage. The hardwood floor gleamed again after careful attention, showing no evidence of the destruction that had occurred moments earlier. But unlike the easily restored surface, my understanding of our relationship could not be polished back to its previous condition. The stain Leonard's words had created in my mind would prove far more permanent than spilled coffee on wooden floors. I disposed of the broken ceramic pieces and returned the cleaning supplies to their designated locations. The kitchen appeared exactly as it had before I attempted to bring Leonard his afternoon coffee. But I was fundamentally changed, carrying knowledge that would alter every subsequent interaction between us. The woman who had awakened this morning believing in her marriage's authenticity no longer existed. In her place stood someone who understood that love and loyalty were not reciprocal currencies in Leonard's emotional economy. Tonight's party would proceed as planned, but I would attend as an informed participant rather than an unknowing victim of his calculated cruelty. The party guests began arriving at 6 o'clock precisely, their voices filling our foyer with animated chatter about Leonard's remarkable achievement. I moved through our home like an actress who had forgotten her lines, greeting each couple with mechanical warmth while the knowledge of Leonard's planned betrayal burned in my chest like swallowed poison. "Cheryl, you must be so proud," gushed Patricia Blackwell, her perfectly manicured hand squeezing my arm with theatrical enthusiasm. "Leonard's promotion is such wonderful news for both of you." I managed a smile that felt carved from stone. "We're very grateful for this opportunity." Behind Patricia's shoulder, I caught sight of Leonard emerging from his office. Phone call concluded. He wore his charcoal suit with the confidence of a man who had just finalized the details of his wife's public destruction. When our eyes met across the crowded living room, he winked at me with what I had always interpreted as loving conspiracy. Now I understood it was the signal between executioner and condemned. Marcus Webb arrived fashionably late, his silver hair gleaming under our chandelier as he embraced Leonard with the familiarity of co-conspirators. They spoke in lowered voices near the fireplace, their conversation punctuated by meaningful glances in my direction. I pretended to adjust the flower arrangements while straining to catch fragments of their discussion. "Everything set?" Marcus asked, his voice barely audible above the party chatter. Leonard nodded toward the small podium I had arranged beside our baby grand piano. "She chose the perfect spot herself. The irony is beautiful." My hands trembled as I reached for a drooping daisy, remembering how carefully I had positioned that podium to ensure Leonard's speech would be visible from every corner of our living room. I had wanted our guests to witness his moment of triumph from the best possible angles. Instead, I had inadvertently created a theater for my own humiliation. Margaret Winters appeared beside me, her pale blue dress impeccable as always. "You've outdone yourself with the arrangements tonight, Cheryl. Though I'm surprised you didn't coordinate your dress with the flowers. Navy seems rather somber for such a celebration." The comment struck like a physical blow. Margaret knew. The careful emphasis on my dress choice, the slight smirk playing at the corners of her mouth, the way her gaze lingered on my outfit with calculating assessment. Leonard had not limited his planning to Marcus Webb. Other wives were apparently aware of tonight's entertainment agenda. "Leonard selected this dress specifically," I replied, testing the waters of their shared knowledge. "How thoughtful of him to take such interest in your appearance," Margaret responded, her tone layered with meaning. "Men do appreciate when we present ourselves appropriately for important occasions." The conversation continued around me as more guests arrived, but I felt increasingly detached from their animated discussions about career advancement and social climbing. Everyone seemed to possess information I lacked, participating in some elaborate performance where I remained the only person unaware of my assigned role. Leonard clinked his knife against his champagne glass at precisely 8 o'clock, calling for attention with the practiced timing of someone who had rehearsed this moment extensively. The room fell silent except for the soft jazz playing from our sound system, which suddenly seemed inappropriately cheerful for what was about to unfold. "Friends, colleagues, neighbors," Leonard began, his voice carrying easily across our living room. "Thank you for joining Cheryl and me tonight to celebrate this incredible milestone in my career." I stood near the kitchen doorway, exactly where I had positioned myself countless times during our dinner parties, the spot that provided easy access to refresh drinks and retrieve additional food without disrupting conversations. Leonard's gaze found me across the crowded room with laser precision, and I felt that familiar chill of recognition that had first struck me outside his office door hours earlier. "7 years ago I was nobody," he continued, his confidence building with each word. "A struggling salesman with big dreams and no connections. I made some questionable choices during that desperate period." The room remained attentively silent, but I noticed subtle shifts in posture as guests prepared for revelation. Margaret Winters positioned herself slightly behind my left shoulder. Patricia Blackwell moved closer to my right side. Marcus Webb watched from across the room with the focused attention of someone waiting for a specific cue. "Including marrying a woman who represented that particular phase of my life," Leonard said, his eyes locked on mine. "My poor phase, if you will." The laughter that erupted felt like physical violence. Each chuckle from people I had welcomed into our homes struck me like individual slaps across the face. The sound seemed to come from every direction, surrounding me with the cruel amusement of friends who had apparently been anticipating this moment for weeks. Margaret's hand landed on my arm with what she probably imagined was comfort, but her eyes sparkled with the unmistakable gleam of someone witnessing premium social drama unfold in real time. Around me, familiar faces transformed into something alien and hostile. Mrs. Henderson from down the street covered her mouth in mock shock while her shoulders shook with suppressed giggles. Tom Bradley, Leonard's former college roommate, raised his champagne glass in what appeared to be a celebratory toast to my public destruction. "Now that I've achieved the success I always knew was possible," Leonard continued, emboldened by their enthusiastic response, "perhaps it's time to consider what a man in my position really needs. A real partner who can match my achievements rather than remind me daily of where I came from." The champagne glass slipped from my fingers, crashing against our hardwood floor with a sound that momentarily cut through the renewed laughter. The crystal shattered into countless fragments, amber liquid spreading across the wood I had polished to perfection just hours earlier. But I barely noticed the mess at my feet, too stunned by the systematic nature of my husband's character assassination. This was not a spontaneous moment of cruel honesty. Leonard had crafted these words with the same careful attention he brought to his quarterly presentations. Every phrase had been calculated for maximum impact, every pause timed to build dramatic tension. The promotion celebration I had planned with such devoted care had been transformed into the stage for my complete social destruction. "Oh my," Patricia whispered beside me, her voice carrying just enough volume to ensure nearby guests could hear her theatrical concern. "Are you feeling quite well, Cheryl? You look rather pale." I stared at the broken glass at my feet, each fragment reflecting the chandelier light like tiny accusatory eyes. The party continued around me as if nothing significant had occurred, conversations resuming their animated pace while I stood paralyzed in the wreckage of my marriage and dignity. Leonard descended from the podium to enthusiastic applause, accepting congratulations and backslaps from colleagues who had just witnessed him discard his wife like outdated furniture. He moved through the crowd with the easy confidence of someone who had successfully completed a difficult but necessary task. I excused myself to our powder room, navigating carefully around the broken glass while guests stepped aside to create a path marked by barely concealed pity and voyeuristic fascination. The bathroom door closed behind me like the lid of a coffin, muffling the continued celebration of my public execution. The fluorescent lighting revealed a stranger in the mirror, a hollow-eyed woman whose carefully applied makeup could not camouflage the devastation written across her features. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to cry without restraint, deep wrenching sobs that emerged from a place I had kept sealed away since childhood. I emerged from the powder room 20 minutes later, my face carefully repaired with makeup from my purse, though nothing could truly disguise the hollow devastation in my eyes. The party had reached its peak energy. Guests clustered around Leonard as he basked in congratulations and backslaps from colleagues who had just witnessed him discard his wife like outdated furniture. "There she is," Patricia Blackwell announced with theatrical brightness as I approached the living room. "We were just telling Leonard how lucky he is to have such a supportive wife during this transition." The word transition hung in the air like smoke, its implications crystal clear to everyone present except, presumably, me. I nodded mechanically, accepting their condescending sympathy while Leonard continued his animated discussion about his new responsibilities and exciting future prospects. The remainder of the evening passed in a haze of forced smiles and hollow conversations. I moved through our home like a ghost haunting her own life, refilling drinks and collecting empty plates while guests offered me pitying looks and carefully worded encouragement about new chapters and fresh starts. Each interaction felt like a small funeral, mourning the death of the woman I had been just hours earlier. By 10 o'clock the last guest had departed, leaving behind empty champagne bottles and the lingering scent of perfume and aftershave. Leonard hummed contentedly as he straightened his tie and checked his appearance in the hallway mirror, apparently satisfied with the evening's successful execution of his plan. "Ready to go?" he asked, jingling his car keys with the casual confidence of someone whose world remained exactly as he preferred it. The drive to our house unfolded in suffocating silence. Leonard had insisted we stay at the downtown hotel tonight to avoid driving after drinking, but now the familiar suburban streets felt foreign and threatening in the darkness. He hummed along with the soft rock station, occasionally tapping the steering wheel in rhythm, completely oblivious to the emotional carnage sitting 3 feet away from him. Our colonial house materialized in the headlight beams, its white facade gleaming like bleached bones in the darkness. The structure I had once considered our sanctuary now appeared alien and unwelcoming, each carefully chosen architectural detail serving as painful testimony to dreams Leonard had just declared publicly obsolete. The wraparound porch where I had spent countless summer evenings reading while Leonard worked late looked like a stage set for a life that no longer existed. He parked in our familiar driveway with practiced ease, the motion automatic after 7 years of shared routines. The garage door opener buzzed to life, revealing the orderly space where I had organized tools and holiday decorations with the same meticulous attention I brought to every aspect of our domestic life. Even the garage reflected my efforts to create perfect order, each item assigned its designated place in service of our shared existence. Leonard whistled softly as we entered through the mudroom, hanging his keys on the hook I had installed beside the door. The house smelled faintly of the vanilla candles I had lit before guests arrived, a scent that once represented warmth and hospitality but now felt cloying and false. "Great party tonight," he commented, loosening his silk tie as we stood in the entryway where we had welcomed family and friends for 7 years of marriage. "I think everyone really understood the message about moving forward." I stared at him, searching his face for any sign of awareness regarding the magnitude of what he had just done. His expression remained pleasant and satisfied, like a man who had successfully completed a challenging but necessary business presentation. "How could you humiliate me like that in front of everyone we know?" I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Leonard paused in the process of removing his cufflinks, genuinely surprised by my question. "Humiliate you? Cheryl, I was being honest about my growth as a person." Surely you understand that successful people sometimes need to make difficult choices about their personal lives. His casual dismissal of our marriage as a difficult choice, rather than a sacred commitment, cut deeper than any public insult. The man standing in our foyer bore little resemblance to the person I had fallen in love with a decade ago. That Leonard had possessed dreams we shared together, ambitions that included rather than excluded me. This is our marriage, Leonard. 7 years of building a life together. How is that just a phase you've outgrown? He finished removing his cufflinks and placed them in the small dish I had positioned on the entry table specifically for that purpose. Every detail of our domestic organization reflected my attention to his preferences and comfort, yet he spoke about our relationship as if it were a business arrangement that no longer served his interests. Look around, Cheryl, he said, gesturing toward our carefully decorated living space. Look at what I've accomplished. Look at where I'm headed professionally. Now look at the wives of the men I work with. Really look at them. What do they bring to their marriages besides supportive smiles? His words forced me to confront a truth I had been desperately avoiding for months. Margaret Winters held an MBA from Wharton and consulted for major corporations. Patricia Blackwell had built a successful interior design business that complemented her husband's real estate investments. Even Sarah Chin, Leonard's younger colleague, possessed advanced degrees and professional credentials that enhanced rather than limited her partner's social standing. I had spent 7 years systematically erasing every aspect of my identity that might compete with Leonard's ambitions. My own college degree in communications gathered dust while I focused on creating the perfect domestic environment for his success. My former interests in writing and community organizations had been gradually abandoned in favor of activities that supported his career networking. Standing surrounded by tangible evidence of the life I had poured my entire being into creating, I experienced the shocking realization that somewhere during this gradual process of self-sacrifice, I had completely disappeared as an individual. The woman Leonard had married possessed her own dreams and capabilities, but she had been methodically erased to make room for his expanding ego. I've supported every goal you've ever had, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. I've organized your life, managed our home, entertained your colleagues, and never once complained about putting your career ahead of everything else. And I'm grateful for that, Leonard replied with the patronizing tone he might use with a helpful secretary. But gratitude doesn't mean I have to pretend we're equals now. You've served your purpose, Cheryl. You helped me through the struggling phase of my career. But now I need something different. The clinical coldness of his assessment rendered me speechless. Our marriage had been reduced to a business transaction in his mind, with clearly defined utility that had simply expired along with his need for my services. Leonard headed toward the stairs, apparently considering our conversation concluded. I'm tired. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day with transition meetings and strategic planning sessions. Try to get some sleep. He disappeared upstairs, leaving me standing alone in the entryway of the home we had supposedly built together. The silence pressed against my ears like water, dense and suffocating. Every familiar object around me seemed to mock the naive woman who had believed in partnership and mutual respect. I walked slowly to our bedroom, where Leonard was already changing into his pajamas with the casual efficiency of someone whose conscience remained perfectly clear. He settled into bed and reached for his phone, scrolling through messages and emails as if nothing significant had occurred tonight. Alone in our master bathroom, I stared at my reflection while removing the makeup I had so carefully applied for his celebration. The woman in the mirror appeared hollow and unfamiliar, her eyes carrying knowledge that would forever change how she moved through the world. I needed to hear a voice from the life I had abandoned when I chose marriage over independence. My sister Emma had always represented the path not taken, the woman who prioritized career over domestic comfort. At 11 o'clock Pacific time, she would still be awake in her Los Angeles apartment, probably reviewing case files for tomorrow's court appearances. The phone rang twice before her familiar voice answered. Cheryl? It's late there. Is everything okay? Everything's not okay, I whispered into the phone, my voice breaking on the words I had been holding inside for 3 months. Emma, Leonard said things tonight that I can't unsay. He called our marriage his poor phase, in front of everyone we know. Emma's sharp intake of breath carried across 3,000 miles. He said what? I repeated Leonard's speech word for word, each phrase cutting just as deeply the second time. Emma remained silent for a long moment, and I could picture her in her sleek Los Angeles apartment, probably pacing between her floor-to-ceiling windows while her legal mind processed the implications of what I had described. Cheryl, listen to me carefully. You have a choice to make. You can let this destroy you or you can use it as fuel. But if you choose the second option, you need to be prepared for war. War. The word lodged itself in my chest like a splinter, sharp and foreign. I had never considered fighting back against Leonard. My entire marriage had been built on accommodation and support, on smoothing his path rather than creating obstacles. That conversation with Emma became my lifeline during the dark months that followed. Because 3 weeks after his triumphant promotion celebration, Leonard's new world began crumbling around him. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning while I was watering the kitchen herbs. Leonard answered with his usual professional confidence, but I watched his face transform as he listened to the voice on the other end. "What do you mean restructuring?" he said, his voice climbing an octave. "I just started this position. My performance reviews have been excellent." I set down the watering can and moved closer, close enough to hear the corporate speak flowing through the phone about difficult decisions, and economic realities, and right-sizing the organization. Leonard's face grew pale, then flushed red with rising panic. "This is about the Henderson account, isn't it? Someone's been spreading lies about my handling of that situation." The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, but the outcome was clear from Leonard's increasingly desperate tone. Morrison and Associates was terminating his employment, effective immediately. The promotion he had celebrated so publicly, the success he had used to justify humiliating me, had evaporated in a single phone call. Leonard hung up and stood frozen in our kitchen, still wearing his pajamas at 11 o'clock in the morning. For a moment, vulnerability flickered across his features, and I felt an automatic impulse to comfort him. But then he looked at me with eyes full of accusation. "This is your fault," he said quietly. "Your pathetic performance at the party. The way you embarrassed me in front of my colleagues. They probably think I can't even manage my own household." The unfairness of his accusation took my breath away. I had endured his public humiliation with as much grace as possible, had continued playing the perfect hostess even while my marriage shattered around me. Yet somehow my reaction to his cruelty had become the cause of his professional failure. That moment marked the beginning of 3 months of psychological warfare in our own home. Leonard spent his days sending resumes into an indifferent job market while spending his evenings cataloging my failures with scientific precision. According to his analysis, my inability to network effectively had cost him valuable connections. My lack of sophistication had embarrassed him at corporate events. My very existence served as a constant reminder of his temporary setback rather than supporting his return to success. "Look at Margaret Winters," he would say during our increasingly tense dinner conversations. "She introduced her husband to the entire board at Carlyle Industries. That woman understands how to leverage social situations for professional advancement." I wanted to remind him that Margaret held an MBA from Wharton and maintained her own consulting practice, but pointing out her credentials would only invite more criticism of my own abandoned academic achievements. Instead, I absorbed his complaints in silence, each one adding weight to the growing conviction that I was indeed the inadequate wife he described. Our social circle, once a source of community and belonging, became treacherous territory where every interaction carried the potential for humiliation. The neighborhood barbecue at the Pattersons' house became an ordeal of sympathetic glances and carefully worded inquiries about Leonard's situation. Margaret and Patricia treated me with a mixture of superiority and false sympathy that made every conversation excruciating. "Any promising leads?" Patricia asked with theatrical concern while we stood near the dessert table, her voice loud enough for nearby guests to overhear. "It must be so stressful for both of you during this transition period." The word transition had become code for Leonard's unemployment, a polite way of discussing his failure without acknowledging its permanence. I smiled and offered vague reassurances about his excellent prospects while internally counting the minutes until we could leave. Leonard's behavior at these events grew increasingly erratic. He would dominate conversations about business trends he no longer participated in, offering analysis of industries where his opinions carried no weight. His desperate attempts to maintain relevance became painful to witness, yet he blamed me for his social awkwardness. "You stood there like a statue," he criticized after the Patterson barbecue. You could have mentioned my consulting possibilities, talked about my strategic insights. Instead, you made me look like a man whose own wife doesn't believe in his capabilities. I began declining social invitations, choosing isolation over public embarrassment. But the loneliness of our empty house only amplified Leonard's criticism and my own growing sense of worthlessness. The woman who had once believed in her value as a partner and companion began to question whether Leonard's assessment of her inadequacies might be accurate. During one particularly difficult afternoon, while Leonard attended yet another networking event that would yield no results, I decided to organize our bedroom closets. The mindless task of sorting clothes and folding linens provided temporary escape from the constant tension that had infected every corner of our home. In the back of my closet, behind boxes of seasonal decorations, I discovered a container I had not opened in years. Inside lay artifacts from the woman I had been before marriage consumed my identity. Photographs from college showing me laughing with friends, my eyes bright with possibility and ambition. Academic certificates recognizing achievements Leonard had never acknowledged. Letters from roommates and classmates who had known me as an individual rather than half of a couple. Among these treasures I found a business card that made my heart skip. Donna Richardson, my former college roommate, had given it to me years ago during a brief lunch meeting. I remembered her enthusiasm about launching her consulting firm, her confidence about building something meaningful in the corporate world. At the time, I had been too absorbed in my role as Leonard's wife to pay serious attention to her professional achievements. The elegant card listed her as principal partner at Richardson & Associates, with offices in the downtown business district. I wondered what kind of woman Donna had become, whether she had managed to build the successful career she had always envisioned. For the first time in months, I felt curiosity about something beyond my own misery. Leonard's voice carried up the stairs as he returned from his networking event, his tone already sharp with disappointment before he had even entered the house. Another afternoon of rejection and false encouragement had ended predictably. Soon he would be cataloging the ways I had failed to support his efforts, analyzing how my shortcomings continued to sabotage his prospects. I tucked Donna's business card into my jewelry box, hiding it among earrings and necklaces I rarely wore anymore. The small act of concealment felt simultaneously guilty and thrilling, like claiming a secret piece of myself that Leonard could not criticize or diminish. That night, as Leonard slept beside me with the exhausted heaviness of a man whose dreams were collapsing, I stared at the ceiling and wondered whether Emma's advice about choosing war over destruction might be more than just sisterly support. For the first time since that devastating party, I began to consider the possibility that Leonard's assessment of my worthlessness might be wrong. 2 weeks passed before I found the courage to retrieve Donna's business card from my jewelry box. Leonard had left for another futile networking breakfast, his daily ritual of disappointment dressed up in his best suit and desperate optimism. The house felt different in his absence, less suffocating, as if the walls themselves could finally exhale. I held the elegant card between my fingers, studying the embossed lettering that spelled out Richardson & Associates. The professional weight of it contrasted sharply with my current reality of grocery lists and household maintenance schedules. My college roommate had built something substantial while I had been perfecting the art of domestic invisibility. My hands trembled as I dialed the number. The receptionist's crisp voice answered on the second ring. Richardson & Associates, how may I direct your call? I'd like to speak with Donna Richardson, please. This is Cheryl Manning, an old college friend. The hold music felt like an eternity. I almost hung up twice, convinced that Donna would be too busy or too successful to remember the quiet girl who had shared her dorm room a decade ago. But then her voice came through the line, warm and unmistakably familiar. Cheryl Manning. I was just thinking about you last week when I saw an article about suburban development in your area. How are you, sweetie? The endearment nearly brought tears to my eyes. When was the last time someone had spoken to me with genuine affection rather than obligation or irritation? I'm complicated, I admitted, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Donna, I need advice. My life has become something I don't recognize and I don't know how to fix it. Tell me everything, she said without hesitation, and I could hear her settling into her chair, giving me her complete attention in a way Leonard hadn't done in years. The entire story poured out of me. Leonard's public humiliation at the promotion party, his subsequent job loss, the months of psychological warfare that had transformed our home into a battlefield where I was both prisoner and target. Donna listened without interrupting, occasionally making sympathetic sounds that let me know she was processing every detail. And now he blames me for everything, I finished, my voice barely above a whisper. He says I'm the reason his career is stalled, that I embarrass him socially, that I'm not the kind of wife a successful man needs. The silence stretched for several seconds before Donna spoke, and when she did, her voice carried the steel I remembered from our college debates. Cheryl, let me ask you something. Does Leonard know about your communications degree? About your work on the university newspaper? About that internship you did with the mayor's office? I blinked in surprise. I had forgotten that Donna knew about those accomplishments, achievements that Leonard had never bothered to learn about despite 7 years of marriage. He's never asked, I said quietly. Of course he hasn't. Men like Leonard don't ask because they don't want to know. They need you to be small so they can feel large. Her voice grew thoughtful. You know, we've been looking for someone with exactly your background. Strategic communications, relationship management, project coordination. The position just opened up last week. My heart stopped. Donna, I couldn't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. But Cheryl, this needs to be handled very carefully. Leonard can never know you were involved in arranging this. His pride would make it impossible for him to accept the position, and more importantly, you would lose all leverage. The word leverage sent an electric shock through my system. I had never possessed leverage in my marriage, had never even considered it as a possibility. What exactly are you suggesting? I asked. Meet me for lunch tomorrow. The Meridian Grill downtown at noon. We need to discuss this face to face. I agreed before I could lose my nerve, then spent the rest of the morning in a state of anxious excitement I hadn't felt since college. The prospect of meeting Donna, of stepping back into a world where my thoughts might matter, felt like preparing for a journey to a foreign country where I had once been fluent but had forgotten the language. The next day, I told Leonard I was having lunch with an old college friend, carefully omitting Donna's last name and professional status. He barely looked up from his laptop, too absorbed in his job search to care about my social activities. The Meridian Grill occupied the top floor of a gleaming office building in the financial district. I felt underdressed despite wearing my best blazer, surrounded by women in expensive suits who moved with the confidence of people who controlled their own destinies. Donna arrived exactly at noon, and I recognized her immediately despite the sophisticated bob haircut and tailored navy dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She embraced me warmly, and I caught a hint of expensive perfume that spoke of success and self-assurance. You look exactly the same, she lied kindly, though her eyes took in the changes that 7 years of diminishing myself had wrought. We were seated at a table overlooking the city, the view encompassing the suburban neighborhoods where I spent my days organizing Leonard's life and absorbing his criticism. From this height, those concerns seemed distant and manageable. Tell me about Richardson and Associates, I said once we had ordered. Donna's face lit up with genuine pride. We started 5 years ago with 3 employees and a borrowed office. Now we have 42 people and clients in 6 states. We specialize in organizational restructuring and strategic communications, helping companies navigate major transitions. The parallel to my own situation was not lost on me. I was certainly in need of major transition navigation. The position I mentioned would be perfect for someone with your background, Donna continued. Corporate relationship management with a focus on helping executives integrate into new organizational structures. The salary range is $60,000 to $80,000, depending on experience. The numbers made my head spin. Leonard had never shared specific details about our finances, handling all monetary decisions himself, but I knew that range represented significant income by any standard. Donna, I haven't worked in 7 years. My confidence is completely shot. I'm not sure I remember how to function in a professional environment. She leaned forward, her gray eyes intense. Confidence is a skill just like any other. It can be rebuilt with practice and success. But first we need to get Leonard back on his feet so you have room to maneuver. Over the next hour, Donna outlined a plan that was both elegant and devious. Leonard's resume would be strategically positioned to highlight exactly the qualifications her firm needed for a new regional director position. His background in sales and client relations would be packaged as invaluable experience for managing corporate restructuring projects. Most importantly, his discovery of this opportunity would appear completely coincidental. He'll receive a call next week from our head of recruitment, Donna explained. We'll say his resume came highly recommended through professional networks. He'll never suspect your involvement. As she spoke, I felt dormant parts of my mind stirring to life. The analytical thinking skills that had earned me academic recognition in college, the strategic planning abilities I had used to coordinate Leonard's career advancement, the satisfaction that came from solving complex problems through careful reasoning. I had forgotten how much I enjoyed intellectual challenges that extended beyond meal planning and social calendar management. Why are you willing to do this for me? I asked. Donna smiled, but there was steel beneath the warmth. Because I remember the woman you were in college. Brilliant, ambitious, capable of anything you set your mind to. That woman is still in there, Cheryl. She's just been buried under years of being told she doesn't matter. The drive home felt different, as if the familiar suburban streets were leading to a destination I had never visited before. I imagined Leonard's excitement when he received an unexpected call from Richardson and Associates. His gratitude for what would appear to be a miraculous reversal of fortune. He would never suspect that his supposedly worthless wife had orchestrated his professional salvation. For the first time in months, I felt something that might have been hope stirring in my chest. Or perhaps it was something more dangerous than hope. Perhaps it was the first taste of power, and the intoxicating realization that I was not nearly as helpless as Leonard had convinced me to believe. The phone call came exactly when Donna had promised it would. Leonard answered on the second ring, his voice carrying the practiced professionalism he reserved for potential employers. I stood at the kitchen sink, pretending to wash dishes while listening to his side of the conversation. Yes, this is Leonard Manning, he said, straightening his posture even though the caller could not see him. Richardson and Associates? I'm not familiar with your company, but I'm certainly interested in hearing about opportunities. I watched his reflection in the window above the sink as his expression shifted from polite interest to genuine excitement. His free hand began gesturing animated, a habit he displayed when truly engaged in professional discussions. Regional account manager? That does sound like it would utilize my background effectively, he continued, moving toward his home office with renewed energy. When would be convenient for an initial conversation? The call lasted 15 minutes, during which Leonard's voice grew increasingly enthusiastic. When he emerged from the office, he was practically glowing with possibility. Cheryl, the most remarkable thing just happened, he announced, loosening his tie with the casual confidence I had not seen in months. A consulting firm downtown called about a position that seems perfectly suited to my experience. They said my resume came highly recommended through professional networks. I dried my hands carefully, arranging my face into an expression of supportive surprise. That's wonderful news, Leonard. Tell me about the company. Richardson and Associates. They specialize in corporate restructuring and strategic communications. The woman I spoke with, Donna Richardson, seems incredibly sharp. She mentioned that they're looking for someone with exactly my combination of sales experience and relationship management skills. The name rolled off his tongue without any recognition of its significance in my life. Donna Richardson was simply another corporate executive to him, not the college roommate who had shared my dorm room and witnessed my academic achievements that he had never bothered to learn about. Do you think it's legitimate? I asked, knowing full well that it was more legitimate than Leonard could possibly imagine. Absolutely. She knew specific details about my background at Morrison and Associates, mentioned some of the client relationships I had developed there. This isn't some random headhunter fishing for candidates. They've done their research. Indeed they had, thanks to the detailed briefing I had provided during my strategic lunch with Donna. Every aspect of Leonard's professional history that she had referenced during their call had been carefully selected to make him feel valued and understood. The interview was scheduled for the following Thursday at their downtown offices. Leonard spent the intervening days researching the company and preparing responses to anticipated questions, his mood lighter than I had seen it since his devastating job loss. He even thanked me for ironing his best shirt and selecting an appropriate tie, gestures of gratitude that had become rare during his months of unemployment and mounting bitterness. Thursday morning arrived with autumn sunshine streaming through our bedroom windows. Leonard showered with unusual care, spending extra time on his grooming routine while humming softly under his breath. I prepared his coffee with the same attention to detail I had maintained throughout our marriage, though now the familiar ritual carried different meaning. Instead of supporting his success from the shadows, I was orchestrating it through channels he could never suspect. "Wish me luck," he said, kissing my cheek before heading to his car. The casual intimacy felt strange after months of tension and criticism, but I recognized it as Leonard's version of gratitude for what he perceived as my unwavering support during his professional difficulties. "You don't need luck," I replied, which was entirely true given the careful preparation that had preceded this moment. He returned 3 hours later radiating an energy I had not witnessed since his initial promotion celebration, before everything had collapsed into months of unemployment and psychological warfare in our own home. "Cheryl, she's brilliant," he announced, hanging his suit jacket in the hallway closet with meticulous care. "Donna Richardson is exactly the kind of business leader I've always hoped to work with. Sharp, insightful, completely focused on results." She asked questions that really demonstrated her understanding of complex organizational dynamics. I nodded encouragingly while remembering my own conversations with Donna, during which she had displayed those same qualities in developing our strategy for Leonard's professional resurrection. "The position is even better than she described over the phone," Leonard continued, his excitement building as he spoke. "Regional account manager with significant autonomy and growth potential. The salary range is excellent, and they offer comprehensive benefits including stock options." The financial details had been carefully calibrated during Donna's planning process, designed to exceed Leonard's previous compensation while remaining within reasonable market parameters. His gratitude would be proportional to the improvement over his current circumstances, making him more receptive to the opportunity. "When will you hear back?" I asked. She said they're making decisions quickly for this position. "Possibly by early next week." The call came on Tuesday just as Donna had predicted. Leonard accepted the offer immediately, his voice carrying genuine excitement about joining what he described as a dynamic organization with real vision for the future. The salary exceeded his previous position by 30%, along with benefits that represented genuine financial security for our household. That evening, Leonard insisted on celebrating at Romano's, the intimate Italian restaurant where we had shared our first official date a decade earlier. The gesture might have carried real emotional significance under different circumstances, but I found it difficult to feel romantic about a dinner celebrating success I had secretly orchestrated. "To new beginnings," Leonard said, raising his wine glass across the candlelit table. "To second chances and unexpected opportunities." I echoed his toast while thinking about my own transformation rather than his career advancement. The woman sitting across from him bore little resemblance to the naive college graduate who had prioritized marriage over personal ambition. That woman had believed in partnership and mutual support. This woman understood power and strategic manipulation. Leonard settled into his new role at Richardson and Associates with the enthusiasm of someone whose faith in his own capabilities had been restored by external validation. His daily reports about office dynamics and client relationships revealed a man who felt genuinely appreciated for his professional contributions, something that had been missing during his final months at Morrison and Associates. "Donna runs incredibly efficient meetings," he would report over dinner. "No time wasted on politics or bureaucratic nonsense. She focuses on results and expects the same from everyone else." I listened to these descriptions of my college roommate with detached amusement, noting how Leonard's respect for her professional competence contrasted sharply with his dismissive attitude toward women he considered less accomplished. Donna had earned his admiration through business success, while I remained categorized as the domestic helper whose contributions were expected rather than valued. Within 6 weeks of starting his new position, Leonard began mentioning Sarah Chin with increasing frequency. The junior associate apparently possessed fresh perspectives on client relationship management and innovative approaches to strategic communications that really complement my experience. His descriptions of her contributions carried an enthusiasm he had not shown when discussing my insights in years. "You should meet her at the holiday party," Leonard suggested one evening. "I think you'd find her interesting. She has some fascinating ideas about work-life integration for modern professionals." The irony was not lost on me. Leonard was eager to introduce me to the younger woman whose professional accomplishments impressed him, apparently unaware that his interest in her capabilities revealed his fundamental disrespect for mine. The holiday party arrived in mid-December, held at an upscale hotel downtown. I wore my black cocktail dress and carefully applied makeup, preparing for what would likely be an evening of observing Leonard's obvious attraction to his brilliant young colleague. Sarah Chin proved to be everything Leonard had described: intelligent, ambitious, and unfortunately naive about the true character of married men who praised her potential while dismissing their wives as obstacles to advancement. She spoke passionately about strategic communications theory and organizational psychology, displaying exactly the kind of intellectual engagement that Leonard craved but had never sought from me. I watched him during their conversation, noting the way he positioned himself to maintain her attention and the subtle manner in which he directed credit toward himself while appearing to celebrate her contributions. The techniques were familiar from our early courtship, when he had made me feel uniquely understood and valued. The evening Leonard came home carrying the unmistakable scent of expensive perfume that did not belong to me, I felt the final piece of my old accommodating self crumble into dust. I sat alone in our kitchen after he had gone upstairs to shower, staring at our wedding photographs still displayed on the refrigerator door, and realized with crystal clarity that romantic love had been replaced by cold, calculating determination. The innocent woman who had married Leonard Manning no longer existed. In her place sat someone far more dangerous. A woman who understood power, possessed hidden resources, and had learned that respect must be taken rather than hoped for. I called Donna the next morning, my voice steady despite the emotional earthquake that had shaken me to my core. The scent of another woman's perfume still lingered in my memory, a tangible reminder that my marriage had become nothing more than a convenient facade for Leonard's evolving ambitions. "I need to know everything about Sarah Chin," I said without preamble when Donna answered her direct line. "Ah," Donna replied, her tone shifting to the cool professionalism she reserved for serious business discussions. "I was wondering when we would have this conversation. Can you meet me for lunch today?" 2 hours later, I sat across from Donna at the West Shore Country Club, the same exclusive venue where Leonard had once dismissed my intelligence during a charity auction 3 years earlier. He had introduced me to potential clients as just a housewife, while praising Margaret Winters as a real strategic thinker within earshot. The memory still stung, but today it felt like ammunition rather than humiliation. "Tell me about Sarah," I said once we had ordered our salads. Donna set down her water glass with deliberate precision. 28 years old, MBA from Northwestern, specializes in organizational psychology and strategic communications. She joined the firm 6 months ago as a junior associate reporting directly to Leonard. The professional credentials hit me like physical blows. Sarah Chin possessed exactly the kind of educational background and career trajectory that Leonard had always suggested I lacked. She represented his vision of an appropriate partner for his current status, someone who could enhance rather than limit his professional aspirations. "Is she aware of his intentions?" I asked. "Sarah is brilliant at business strategy but remarkably naive about office politics. She interprets Leonard's mentorship as professional development rather than personal pursuit. She's mentioned feeling grateful for his guidance and investment in her career growth." I recognized the pattern immediately. Leonard had used identical techniques during our courtship, making me feel uniquely understood and valued while positioning himself as my intellectual superior and professional guide. The manipulation was so familiar that I could predict his next moves with surgical precision. What does she know about me? Very little. Leonard rarely mentions his personal life at work, and when he does, it's usually to complain about domestic obligations interfering with his professional focus. "Sarah probably views you as the typical corporate wife who doesn't understand the demands of his career." The casual dismissal of my existence felt oddly liberating. If Sarah Chin saw me as irrelevant to Leonard's professional world, she would never suspect that his wife possessed the connections and strategic capabilities to influence his career trajectory. Her blind spot regarding my involvement would prove advantageous when the time came for more direct action. "Tell me about his position at Richardson and Associates. What are his vulnerabilities?" Donna leaned forward slightly, her gray eyes sharpening with the focus she brought to competitive analysis. "Leonard manages 3 major client accounts representing approximately 40% of his department's annual revenue. His role requires absolute trust and reliability because these clients have long-term contracts with significant penalty clauses for service disruptions." She explained the intricate web of professional relationships that supported Leonard's current success. His reputation with key decision-makers depended on maintaining consistent performance and demonstrating sound judgment in both strategic planning and personnel management. Any questions about his character or reliability could cascade through the organization, affecting his standing with clients who valued stability above innovation. The Henderson Group account alone generates $2 million in annual fees, Donna continued. Leonard has primary responsibility for that relationship, and Robert Henderson specifically requested him after their initial meeting. If Henderson lost confidence in Leonard's judgment or professionalism, the entire account could be at risk. This information crystallized my understanding of Leonard's professional dependencies. His success at Richardson & Associates was built on personal relationships rather than institutional loyalty, making him vulnerable to reputation damage in ways he probably had not considered. The knowledge felt like discovering architectural blueprints for a building I intended to demolish with surgical precision. What would happen if questions arose about his personal conduct? Hypothetically speaking. Donna's smile carried the sharp edge I remembered from our college debate competitions. Corporate clients in our industry are remarkably conservative about personal scandals. They associate professional reliability with personal integrity, sometimes to an unrealistic degree. Any suggestion that Leonard lacks sound judgment in his personal life would raise concerns about his decision-making capabilities in professional contexts. The conversation continued for another hour, during which Donna provided detailed intelligence about office dynamics, client expectations, and the specific performance metrics that determined Leonard's continued employment. She explained how my background in communications and project management could be leveraged to establish independent credibility within her organization, creating opportunities for legitimate consulting work that would position me as a professional equal rather than a dependent spouse. The plan is elegant in its simplicity, Donna said as we prepared to leave. We use Leonard's current success against him while building your own platform for future independence. He'll never suspect your involvement until it's too late to prevent the consequences. The framework we developed was methodical and comprehensive. Phase 1 would involve establishing my credibility as a strategic consultant with legitimate expertise in organizational communications. Phase 2 would create opportunities for me to interact with Leonard's key clients and colleagues, allowing them to witness my professional capabilities firsthand. Phase 3 would depend on Leonard's behavior, but the groundwork would be established for swift action if his personal conduct threatened professional relationships. The beauty of this approach, Donna explained, is that Leonard's own arrogance becomes his greatest vulnerability. He's so convinced of your insignificance that he won't recognize the threat until your influence is already established. As we walked to the parking garage, I felt the satisfaction that comes from transforming emotional pain into strategic advantage. The woman who had discovered perfume scent on her husband's clothing the previous evening had evolved overnight into someone far more dangerous. A strategic thinker with resources, connections, and a comprehensive understanding of her target's weaknesses. There's one more thing you should know, Donna said as we reached our cars. Sarah Chin has been asking questions about opportunities for advancement within the firm. She's ambitious and talented, but she lacks the political sophistication to navigate the complexities of rapid promotion. If Leonard has made promises about accelerating her career development, she may be setting herself up for disappointment. This final piece of intelligence completed the picture. Leonard was not simply pursuing an affair with a younger colleague. He was making commitments about professional advancement that he lacked the authority to fulfill independently. His promises to Sarah would create expectations that could lead to complications affecting multiple client relationships and organizational dynamics. The drive home felt different than it had just hours earlier. Instead of carrying the weight of betrayal and humiliation, I now possessed detailed intelligence about Leonard's professional vulnerabilities and personal entanglements. The knowledge transformed my perspective from victim to strategist, from helpless spouse to informed adversary. Leonard was waiting in the kitchen when I arrived, his face carrying the casual satisfaction of someone who believed his secrets remained safely hidden. He asked about my lunch with Donna in the distracted tone he used for conversations he considered unimportant, never suspecting that his wife had spent 2 hours gathering intelligence about his career, his colleagues, and his naive young protégé. "Just catching up on old times," I replied, which was technically accurate while omitting the strategic planning that would determine his future. The deception felt natural and necessary, the first step in a longer campaign that would require patience, precision, and the careful management of information that could destroy everything he had built. That evening, as Leonard worked late in his home office on what he claimed were urgent client presentations, I began researching organizational psychology and strategic communications theory. If I intended to establish credibility as a consultant in Donna's world, I needed to refresh knowledge that had been dormant since college while developing expertise in contemporary business practices. The woman who had married Leonard Manning 7 years earlier would never have contemplated such calculated deception. But that woman no longer existed, replaced by someone who understood that power was not given freely but taken through strategic planning and patient execution. The following Monday morning, I stood before my bedroom mirror adjusting the charcoal gray blazer I had not worn in 3 years. The professional attire felt foreign after months of suburban casual wear, but the transformation was necessary for what Donna and I had planned. Today, I would enter Leonard's professional sanctuary not as his dependent wife, but as a strategic consultant worthy of serious business consideration. Donna had spent the weekend preparing her staff for my visit. According to the carefully constructed narrative, I was a potential consultant being considered for a high-level project requiring specialized expertise in organizational communications and relationship management. The fiction was sophisticated enough to withstand casual scrutiny while positioning me as someone deserving respect and professional attention from Richardson and Associates senior leadership. I arrived at the downtown office building at 10 o'clock, my heels clicking against marble floors as I approached the elevator bank. The lobby bustled with professionally dressed men and women carrying briefcases and speaking in the clipped tones of people managing important business. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged in this environment rather than merely visiting it as Leonard's appendage. Donna met me at the reception desk on the 15th floor, her greeting warm but appropriately professional for the benefit of observing colleagues. She wore a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and her confidence filled the space around her like an invisible force field. "Cheryl, wonderful to see you," she said, extending her hand for a firm handshake. "I'm excited to show you our facilities and discuss how your expertise might complement our current initiatives." The elevator carried us to the 4th floor, where Leonard maintained his corner office with windows overlooking the financial district. Through the glass walls that separated individual offices from the main corridor, I could see him at his desk reviewing documents with the serious expression he adopted when attempting to appear indispensable to his colleagues. His dark suit was impeccably tailored, his posture erect and focused, projecting the image of a successful professional fully engaged in important work. He had not yet noticed our arrival in the adjacent conference room, providing me with the psychological advantage of observing his behavior before he became aware of my unexpected presence in his professional sanctuary. I watched him answer his phone with practiced authority, gesture animated during what appeared to be a complex discussion about client relationships or strategic planning. This was Leonard in his element, the version of himself he considered most authentic and valuable. "Impressive facilities," I commented to Donna, though my attention remained focused on my husband's professional performance just 20 feet away. "We've worked hard to create an environment that supports both collaboration and focused individual work," Donna replied, her voice carrying easily through the conference room as we settled into leather chairs around a polished wooden table. The glass walls maintained transparency while providing necessary privacy for confidential discussions. As we began our staged conversation about potential consulting opportunities, I noticed Leonard glance up from his desk work. His expression cycled rapidly through confusion, recognition, and something approaching genuine panic as he processed the unexpected sight of his supposedly insignificant wife in his workplace. Through the transparent walls, he observed Donna introducing me to Marcus Webb and Patricia Sullivan, two senior partners whose respect he had worked months to earn. Donna had choreographed this moment with theatrical precision. She presented me to her colleagues as someone instrumental to the company's next major growth phase, speaking with the authority of someone announcing a significant acquisition that would benefit everyone involved in the organization. Each handshake and smile served as testimony to my apparent importance and professional credibility. "Cheryl brings a unique perspective on strategic communications that could prove invaluable for our expansion into new market segments," Donna explained to Marcus Webb, her tone carrying the conviction of someone who had carefully evaluated my qualifications. Her background combines theoretical knowledge with practical implementation experience, Marcus nodded thoughtfully, his gray eyes assessing me with the attention he typically reserved for potential business partners rather than employees' spouses. That combination is rare in our industry. Most consultants specialize in either strategy development or operational execution, but rarely both. I responded with insights drawn from my research over the weekend, discussing current trends in organizational psychology and their applications to corporate restructuring projects. The conversation flowed naturally, my dormant analytical skills awakening under the stimulus of professional engagement. For the first time in years, I felt intellectually challenged and respected for my contributions rather than merely tolerated as background presence. Leonard appeared in the conference room doorway during our discussion about market penetration strategies. His face appeared notably pale beneath his carefully maintained tan, and his usual professional composure seemed strained around the edges. "Cheryl," he said, his voice carrying confusion and barely concealed alarm. "What are you doing here?" I turned toward him with the casual tone I might use for a distant acquaintance rather than my husband of 7 years. "Hello, Leonard." Donna was showing me around the facilities while we discussed potential collaboration opportunities. His obvious confusion deepened as I explained our conversation about strategic consulting projects that could benefit both my expertise and Richardson and Associates' client base. I watched him struggle to process this information, witnessing the exact moment when he realized that his wife, the woman he had consistently dismissed as a relic of his previous life phase, was being actively courted by his employer for her professional capabilities and industry connections. "I had no idea you were considering consulting work," Leonard managed, his voice tight with barely controlled anxiety. "There are many things about my background that we've never discussed," I replied with deliberate understatement, allowing the implication to settle in the space between us. Marcus Webb chose that moment to make a particularly pointed observation about my professional credentials. "Leonard, I'm genuinely impressed by Cheryl's background in strategic consulting. You never mentioned your wife's extensive experience in organizational communications during our previous conversations about industry trends." The comment landed with surgical precision. Leonard's mouth opened and closed soundlessly as he struggled to reconcile this new information with his fixed image of our marriage, where I existed solely as his supporting cast rather than an independent professional with expertise and network connections. The idea that I might possess genuine value separate from him, that I might have developed skills and relationships he had never bothered to discover or acknowledge, appeared to short-circuit his fundamental understanding of our relationship dynamics. "Cheryl has always been very supportive of my career," Leonard finally managed, his tone suggesting he was grasping for familiar ground in an increasingly unstable conversation. "Support is valuable," Patricia Sullivan interjected with a knowing smile, "but active professional collaboration offers much more substantial benefits for everyone involved." The distinction was subtle but unmistakable. Patricia was differentiating between my traditional role as Leonard's domestic supporter and my potential function as a professional equal worthy of respect and meaningful compensation. The senior partners treated me with a level of deference Leonard had never witnessed, asking my opinions on market trends and strategic initiatives as if my insights carried genuine weight in their decision-making processes. Our meeting continued for another 30 minutes. During which Leonard remained hovering near the conference room doorway like someone uncertain whether he was welcome in a conversation that should have included him naturally. His discomfort grew more apparent as the discussion progressed, particularly when Donna mentioned my potential involvement in client relationship management and strategic planning projects that overlapped with his current responsibilities. "We should schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss specific project parameters and compensation structures," Donna concluded, extending her hand for another firm handshake. "I think this collaboration could prove mutually beneficial for everyone involved." As we walked toward the elevator, Leonard fell into step beside us, his professional mask firmly in place despite the obvious strain beneath its surface. "Cheryl, I had no idea you were interested in returning to consulting work." "I've been developing my expertise quietly for some time," I replied, which was technically accurate while omitting the strategic planning that had preceded this moment. Donna recognized potential applications for my background that align with Richardson and Associates' current growth initiatives. The elevator doors closed behind us and I felt the satisfaction that comes from witnessing someone's worldview shift in real time. Leonard's entire understanding of our marriage had been built on his intellectual and professional superiority. his assumption that I brought nothing of value to our partnership beyond domestic maintenance and social support. Today's demonstration of my professional credibility and industry connections had shattered those assumptions with surgical precision. The woman who had entered Richardson and Associates that morning was fundamentally different from the one who had discovered perfume scent on her husband's clothing just days earlier. That woman had been a victim of circumstances beyond her control. This woman possessed leverage, connections, and the growing confidence that comes from being valued for her mind rather than merely tolerated for her convenience. 2 weeks after my strategic introduction to Richardson and Associates, Donna called with an opportunity that would complete my transformation from invisible wife to recognized professional. The quarterly company meeting was approaching, and she needed someone to present on strategic market positioning for their upcoming client expansion initiative. Your expertise in organizational communications would be perfect for this topic, she explained during our phone conversation. The presentation would be to the entire staff, including senior partners and all department heads. It's exactly the kind of visibility that establishes credibility within our industry. I accepted without hesitation, though my stomach tightened with nervous energy. This would be my first professional presentation in 7 years, delivered to an audience that included my husband and his colleagues who had witnessed his public dismissal of my capabilities just months earlier. The following week, I spent every afternoon in our home office preparing while Leonard attended his regular work meetings. I researched current market trends, analyzed competitive positioning strategies, and developed frameworks for client relationship management that drew from both academic theory and practical business applications. The intellectual engagement felt like oxygen to someone who had been suffocating, each hour of preparation awakening analytical skills I had forgotten I possessed. Leonard noticed my increased computer usage but attributed it to typical domestic activities like online shopping or social media browsing. His assumptions about my intellectual limitations remained so deeply ingrained that he never questioned why I might be spending concentrated time on research and strategic analysis. The morning of the presentation, I dressed with the same care I had once reserved for supporting Leonard's career milestones. My navy suit was professionally tailored, my makeup understated but polished, my demeanor calm despite the significance of what was about to unfold. This would be my public debut as someone worthy of professional respect rather than polite tolerance. The Richardson and Associates conference room filled steadily as employees from every department gathered for the quarterly meeting. I positioned myself near the front, reviewing my notes one final time while observing the audience that would witness either my professional resurrection or complete humiliation. Leonard entered with several colleagues from his department, taking a seat in the back row where he could observe without drawing attention to our personal relationship. His expression registered surprise when Donna introduced me as the presenter rather than a guest observer, his eyebrows rising as she outlined my credentials and expertise in strategic market positioning. The confusion on his face deepened as she described my background in organizational communications with the authority of someone who had thoroughly vetted my qualifications. Cheryl brings a unique perspective that combines theoretical knowledge with practical implementation experience, Donna announced to the assembled staff. Her insights into client relationship management will prove invaluable as we expand into new market segments. I approached the podium with steady confidence, my years of academic training returning like muscle memory despite the extended hiatus from professional presentations. The opening minutes focused on industry trends and competitive analysis, territory where I could establish credibility before moving into more complex strategic frameworks. The audience remained attentively engaged as I discussed market penetration strategies and organizational positioning techniques. Several senior partners took notes, their body language suggesting genuine interest rather than polite obligation. Even colleagues who had previously known me only as Leonard's wife began asking substantive questions about implementation methodologies and performance metrics. During the question period, Marcus Webb inquired about my experience with major corporate clients. I mentioned several former classmates who now held senior positions at Fortune 500 companies, describing collaborative projects we had worked on during my consulting internship years earlier. The names I dropped carried significant weight within their industry, and several attendees recognized these contacts with obvious respect. You maintain active relationships with Patricia Morrison at Carlisle Industries? Asked Janet Sullivan from the business development team. She's considered one of the most innovative strategic planners in the region. We've stayed in touch since graduate school, I replied casually, omitting the fact that Patricia and I had exchanged holiday cards and occasional emails for years without Leonard ever learning about these connections. She's been generous with insights about organizational restructuring trends. Leonard's face grew increasingly pale as the conversation continued. Each revelation about my professional network and industry connections demonstrated the extent of resources he had dismissed as non-existent throughout our marriage. His entire worldview had been constructed around his intellectual superiority and my domestic limitations, assumptions that were crumbling in real time before his colleagues and superiors. The presentation concluded to enthusiastic applause, with several senior partners approaching to discuss potential consulting opportunities and collaborative projects. Their interest appeared genuine rather than merely polite, suggesting that my professional credibility had been successfully established within the organization that employed my husband. Donna chose that moment to make an announcement that would complete Leonard's professional humiliation. I'm pleased to announce that Cheryl will be joining Richardson and Associates as a special consultant focusing on client relationship management. She'll be working closely with our junior associates to develop strategic communication frameworks for our expansion initiatives. She gestured towards Sarah Chin, who had been sitting near the front taking detailed notes throughout my presentation. Sarah will be supporting this initiative under Cheryl's direct supervision, bringing her excellent analytical skills to complement Cheryl's strategic expertise. The irony was perfect and devastating. The woman Leonard had hoped to replace me with would now report to me professionally, creating a dynamic where his romantic interest became my professional subordinate. Sarah's expression registered confusion about this unexpected arrangement, clearly uncertain about the complex personal dynamics she had unknowingly entered. Leonard appeared physically ill as he processed the implications of this power reversal. His affair with Sarah had been premised on her professional sophistication and career ambitions, qualities he had claimed were absent in his marriage. Now his wife held direct authority over the woman he had positioned as his intellectual and professional superior. As colleagues dispersed from the conference room, Marcus Webb approached Leonard with pointed questions that served as public accountability for his previous dismissal of my capabilities. Leonard, I'm genuinely puzzled about why you never mentioned Cheryl's impressive qualifications when we've had numerous conversations about expanding our strategic consulting capabilities, Webb said, his tone carrying clear criticism. The company has been searching for exactly this kind of expertise, and you never thought to mention that your wife possessed these skills and connections. Leonard's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, his usual professional eloquence completely absent as he struggled to explain his oversight without revealing the depth of his disregard for my professional potential. Cheryl has always been very supportive, he managed weakly, falling back on the familiar territory of my domestic contributions rather than acknowledging professional capabilities he had never bothered to investigate. Support is valuable, Webb replied with obvious skepticism, but active professional collaboration offers substantially more benefits for organizational growth. Your wife's presentation today demonstrated exactly the kind of strategic thinking we need for our client expansion initiative. The public questioning served as poetic justice for Leonard's original humiliation of me at his promotion party. He now experienced the shame of being diminished before colleagues while his previously dismissed wife received recognition and respect he had never witnessed me command. The role reversal was complete and surgical in its precision. Sarah Chin approached me as the conference room emptied, her expression carrying uncertainty about our new professional relationship. I'm looking forward to working with you on the client relationship initiative, she said, though her tone suggested confusion about how this arrangement had developed so quickly. I think you'll find the project both challenging and rewarding, I replied with professional courtesy, noting how Leonard watched our interaction from across the room with obvious anxiety. His romantic pursuit of Sarah had just become significantly more complicated now that she reported directly to the wife he had publicly dismissed and privately betrayed. The woman who left Richardson and Associates that afternoon bore no resemblance to the suburban housewife who had discovered perfume scent on her husband's clothing just weeks earlier. I had reclaimed not only my professional identity but also the respect and recognition that Leonard had systematically denied me throughout our marriage. The balance of power between us had shifted irrevocably, and he was only beginning to understand the full implications of what had transpired. That evening, Leonard sat across from me at our dining room table, mechanically cutting his salmon into precise geometric shapes without bringing any of it to his mouth. The silence between us carried a weight that had fundamentally shifted since morning, when he had watched his supposedly insignificant wife command professional respect from his colleagues and superiors. For the first time in our 7-year marriage, his discomfort filled the space rather than mine. I ate my dinner with deliberate composure, savoring both the meal and the role reversal that had transformed our domestic dynamic. The woman who had once absorbed his criticism while serving his preferences now possessed leverage he was only beginning to comprehend. The balance of power between us had shifted so dramatically that even our familiar dining room felt like foreign territory where new rules applied. "So," Leonard said finally, setting down his fork with careful precision, "how long have you known Donna Richardson?" The question carried layers of accusation and bewilderment that he was struggling to articulate diplomatically. I met his gaze with steady confidence, noting how his usual authority had been replaced by something approaching vulnerability. "Since college," I replied, cutting my vegetables with the same methodical attention he was giving to his untouched salmon. "We were roommates for 2 years and have maintained our friendship ever since." Leonard's face registered the implications of this information like someone solving a complex equation with unpleasant results. His eyes narrowed slightly as he processed the timeline, calculating how many years I had possessed connections and capabilities he had never bothered to investigate or acknowledge. "You never mentioned that she owned a consulting firm," he said, his tone carefully neutral despite the accusation beneath it. "You never asked about my college friendships or professional connections," I responded with equal neutrality. "You assumed I had none worth mentioning." The truth hung between us like a challenge neither of us could ignore. For years, Leonard had treated me as if I possessed nothing of value beyond domestic maintenance and social support. He had created a version of our marriage where I existed solely to reflect his importance, never imagining that I might maintain an independent identity with resources and relationships he had dismissed as non-existent. Over the following days, Leonard made increasingly desperate attempts to reassert control within our household. He questioned the legitimacy of my consulting work, suggesting that Donna had offered me the position out of misguided charity rather than genuine recognition of my professional capabilities. He dismissed my new colleagues as people playing elaborate games of corporate networking rather than engaging in meaningful business relationships. "You're getting ahead of yourself with these sudden career ambitions," he said one morning while reviewing his own work emails at the breakfast table. "Consulting requires years of experience and industry relationships that you simply don't possess." His criticism revealed the desperation of someone whose entire identity had been built on intellectual and professional superiority over his spouse. The evidence of my competence and connections threatened his fundamental understanding of our relationship dynamics, forcing him to confront the possibility that his dominance had always been maintained through my willing compliance rather than his inherent advantages. I responded to his challenges with calm professionalism, neither arguing nor yielding to his attempts at diminishment. The woman who had once absorbed his criticism in silence had been replaced by someone who understood that his approval was no longer necessary for her self-worth or professional advancement. "My consulting work stands on its own merits," I replied without defensiveness. "Donna and her partners are sophisticated business professionals who don't make hiring decisions based on personal charity." The composed confidence in my voice seemed to unnerve Leonard more than argumentative responses would have. He was accustomed to emotional reactions that validated his position as the rational authority in our household. My professional composure denied him that familiar dynamic while establishing new boundaries he was struggling to navigate. My new role at Richardson & Associates required regular collaboration with Sarah Chin, creating a professional relationship that gradually revealed the complicated personal dynamics surrounding her involvement with Leonard. During our first project meeting, I observed her carefully, noting the intelligence and ambition that had attracted Leonard's attention while recognizing the naivety that had made her vulnerable to his manipulation. Sarah possessed genuine expertise in organizational psychology and demonstrated analytical skills that would prove valuable for client relationship management projects. Her youth and professional enthusiasm reminded me of my own career aspirations before marriage had consumed my individual identity. The irony was not lost on me that Leonard's romantic interest had chosen the professional path I had abandoned to support his ambitions. As we worked together over several weeks, Sarah began to understand the complex situation she had unknowingly entered. During one particularly uncomfortable team meeting, her expression registered growing awareness that the married man who had been mentoring her career was the same person whose wife now served as her direct supervisor. The realization created an ethical and professional dilemma that forced Sarah to re-evaluate Leonard's character and intentions. Her discomfort with the situation became increasingly evident during our collaborative work sessions, where she struggled to maintain professional focus while processing the implications of his romantic pursuit. Leonard noticed Sarah's growing distance during their office interactions, his confidence wavering as he realized that his professional authority over her had been supplanted by my supervisory role. The power dynamic that had enabled his romantic pursuit had been systematically dismantled through strategic planning he had never suspected. One afternoon, Sarah requested a private meeting to discuss her position within the consulting initiative. We met in a small conference room adjacent to Donna's office, where she could speak candidly without concern about professional repercussions. "I need to be completely honest with you about a situation that's affecting my ability to focus on our project work," she began, her voice carrying the careful precision of someone navigating delicate territory. I waited for her to continue, maintaining professional neutrality while internally recognizing the conversation Leonard had been dreading since my appointment as her supervisor. "Leonard has been suggesting that we develop a personal relationship beyond our professional collaboration," Sarah continued, her discomfort evident in her choice of diplomatic language. "I initially interpreted his interest as career mentorship, but recent conversations have made his intentions clear." The admission confirmed what I had suspected while providing Sarah with an opportunity to extricate herself from a situation that had become professionally compromising. Her willingness to address the issue directly demonstrated the ethical standards that separated her from Leonard's willingness to exploit professional relationships for personal gain. "I appreciate your honesty," I replied carefully. "How would you prefer to handle this situation moving forward?" Over the following weeks, Sarah maintained strictly professional boundaries with Leonard while excelling in her work on client relationship management projects. Her relief at escaping his romantic pursuit was evident in her renewed focus and collaborative enthusiasm. Leonard's realization that his intended replacement had chosen professional integrity over his personal attention served as a final blow to his assumptions about his own irresistible appeal. As autumn progressed into winter, I discovered that my revenge had evolved into something more meaningful than simple retaliation. The consulting work provided intellectual stimulation and financial independence that I had forgotten were possible. My re-established friendship with Donna offered emotional support from someone who valued my capabilities rather than merely tolerating my presence. Leonard remained in our marriage, chastened and diminished but still present as we negotiated a new dynamic where mutual respect had replaced his former dominance. The transformation was not complete reconciliation, but rather an acknowledgement that our relationship required fundamental restructuring if it were to continue. The woman who had once stood silently while her husband mocked her publicly had been replaced by someone who understood that true power came not from revenge but from refusing to remain invisible in her own life. I had reclaimed not just my professional identity but also my sense of personal worth, assets that no one could diminish or destroy without my permission. Standing in our kitchen one December morning, preparing coffee with the same attention to detail I had maintained throughout our marriage, I realized that the ritual now carried different meaning. Instead of serving his preferences from a position of dependence, I was choosing to maintain domestic traditions from a foundation of personal strength and professional independence. The future remained uncertain, but the balance of power between us had shifted irrevocably. Leonard's assumptions about my limitations had been systematically dismantled through strategic planning and professional achievement. The woman he had dismissed as disposable had proven herself not only valuable but indispensable to the organization that employed him. That recognition brought not bitter satisfaction but a profound sense of completeness. I had reclaimed my place in the world not through destruction of others but through the resurrection of capabilities I had allowed to lie dormant too long. The silent betrayal that had nearly destroyed me had ultimately become the catalyst for my professional and personal resurrection. If this story of strategic transformation kept you captivated until the very end, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Cheryl delivered that company-wide presentation, watching Leonard realize his wife possessed capabilities he never bothered to discover. What was your favorite moment of her journey? Share it in the comments below. Don't miss more powerful stories of resilience and empowerment like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.